Hey guys, welcome back to another Sunday episode. Today we are going to dig into the Gaunt family tree history. In this video, we will be discussing how the Gaunt house came to be, and then we'll be going through each individual member of this infamous line. Going all the way back to the very beginning, Cadmus Peverell was the Peverell brother that got the resurrection stone from Death himself in the story of the Deathly Hallows and Beetle of the Bard. Somewhere along the lines, the Peverell family and the Slytherin family did cross over, and a family member from each side got married, and from there descended in an Irish line was the House of Gaunt. We don't know a whole lot of these ancestors, we just know that there's a couple generations, and it is these two families connected that create the House of Gaunt through an Irish line. This will be an incredibly important detail later on in our story because this is how the Resurrection Stone came to be in Harry Potter's possession. Rhiannoc and Gormlaith Gaunt were sisters in this Gaunt line, obviously pureblood witches, but they had two very different ideas about their family traditions. Gormlaith went head first, totally believed everything the family said, was a true blood supremacist. She did attend Hogwarts and was obviously sorted into Slytherin. Rhiannoc did not share her sister's views, and she married another pureblood wizard, William Sayer, and the two were very fond, I wouldn't say fond, but they were compassionate towards muggles. They really showed a kindness, and they were known that within their village, they would produce some magical cures, things to help them with, sickness or their livestock or other random little daily problems that they would have. She would be able to make these very simple solutions for them. Now, the Sayer family is said to descend from Morrigan, who is a very, very ancient witch throughout, wizarding history. And she was one of the very first wizards to be able to do the animagus process, and she was able to turn into a crow. Rhiannoc and William had a daughter in 1603 named Isolt, and they raised her to be compassionate and did not raise her in those pureblood supremacist mindsets. When Isolt was only 5 years old, her aunt Gormlaith came to the family home that was named Ilvermourny Cottage and burnt it to the ground with Isolt's parents inside. Gormlaith took Isolt, capturing her niece, claiming she was saving her and saving the line and saving their mindset of pureblood supremacy, and she pretty much held Isolt hostage for the next 12 years. During those 12 years, Isolt suffered greatly watching Gormlaith torture and crucio muggles and livestock, anybody that came too close to the house, and honestly just for fun sometimes. When Isolt turned 11, she got her Hogwarts letter, but Gormlaith refused to allow her to go to a school that would allow Muggleborns to attend. She refused to allow her to be around anybody that thought differently, anybody that she deemed was not worthy to learn magic. She also totally refused to ever give Isolt a wand, but she still taught her the dark art. She still wanted to teach Isolt her ways and everything that she knew and wanted to really mold her after herself. It never took, but she tried, and eventually, once Isolt was 17, she had learned enough magic from Gormlaith, and in the middle of the night, I assume one night, because she didn't try to fight Gormlaith, she just stole the wand and snuck away and just tried to run away and hide herself in history as best as she could. She first ran away to England, where Gormlaith almost found her, so then she hopped on the Mayflower and traveled over to America. Once here, she had to, hide herself again. There were a lot of purists, a lot of muggles really weren't understanding of this. This is the whole, burn the witch at the stake and all that fun stuff. So even in America, Isolt had to find some protection, a way to keep herself safe here. During Isolt's travels through America, she came across a magical creature called a Pudwucky. This, to me, the images that I see are very similar to like an elf, a goblin. They do have their own type of magic, and I'll put a picture up. She comes across this Pudwucky that's about to be attacked by another magical creature called Hide Behind. This is something that we do see in Fantastic Beasts, and it's something that can shapeshift and hide behind a lot of things, and they're incredibly dangerous. So she helps the Pudwucky, saves him, the hide behind runs away, and she nurses the Pudwucky back to life, not knowing that Pudwuckies are very, very, very dangerous to all humans. Wizards, non-wizards, they just don't like humans at all, no matter who they are. So this Pudwucky, after her showing this level of kindness to him, he pledged his loyalty to her. He was very loyal, devoted his life to being around her, taking care of her. So the two just went on a bunch of adventures. He introduced her to a bunch of different magical creatures that they met throughout their time and adventuring through the woods. These creatures eventually became the names of the 4 houses of Ilvermourny School, but we will get to that soon. Also, after she had healed the Pudwucky and he had pledged his loyalty and they, formed a really, really wonderful friendship, Isolt named him William after her late father. One day while Isolt and William were adventuring through the woods, they came across a hide behind that was the same one that had attacked William, and he was now attacking this family of 4 wizards, the Boots family. He had already killed both of the parents, but the 2 boys were very injured. Isolt and William take down the hide behind and rescue the boys. William doesn't really care about these kids. Like I said, they don't care about humans. He didn't really care what was happening with them. He was kind of just doing his own thing while Isolt was trying to help them. Her mother had very, very, very powerful healing magic, and I'm sure Isolt probably had the same within her. Isolt's trying to help these boys, and William could not care less. Isolt gets really mad about this and frustrated, and eventually she just starts yelling at William to help her carry the boys home. He helps her carry them home. He carries Chadwick, and I think she carries Webster. But once they get back to the house, Isolt's so mad that she tells William to just go away. She says, "I'm done with you, leave, get out of my house." She then takes care of these boys completely by herself, and after a couple weeks of nursing them back to health, she finally has enough time to go back to the site where the parents had been killed by the hide behind so she could bury their bodies properly. This is when Isolt meets her future husband, James Stewart. He is already there showing his respects to the parents. And he picks up these broken wands. He's actually a nomad, so he has no idea what these are. He picks up these wands and he's looking at them. And I think it was a phoenix wand core, if I remember correctly. But anyway, he waves it a little bit and it just shoots him back and he hits a tree and he goes completely unconscious. Isolt, takes another injured little bird back to her house and nurses him back to health as well. He wakes up, he's very confused. He didn't know what witches were, he was very concerned, but he does know the Boots boys, so he does start to help. He entertains them throughout the day and helps Isolt take care of them. And it becomes just a very welcomed addition to the home, and things kind of just fit and they just work. Isolt claimed that she would obliviate him eventually, as she, Chadwick, and Webster were all wizards, and he now was aware of wizard kind, and this was a big no-no. Day by day went by and he became more understanding and interested in magic and very accepting of her and the boys, so she never obliviated him. Eventually they fell in love, admitted it, and got married, and essentially adopted the 2 boys, and the 4 lived as a family. Now, Isolt grew up really, really, really wanting to go to Hogwarts, and I'm sure she told Chadwick and Webster of stories about Hogwarts as well, and they got attached to this idea. They both really, really wanted to go to this school, but Hogwarts itself really only takes students from the UK and Ireland anyway, and she could not risk Gormlaith finding her or these boys, and she didn't want to scare the family by telling them that, so she was just like, "We'll start our own school, and I promise I'll get you guys wands." She had no idea how she was going to do this, but as it got a little bit closer to Chadwick's 11th birthday, she had a dream that a horned serpent that she had befriended on her adventures with William the Pudwick, she had a dream that this horned serpent had shaved off a little sliver, a shaving of one of his horns, and gave it to her as a gift for these wands. The next day she went and found the serpent, and he did exactly that. She came home and woke her husband James, and James became the first ever Muggle wand maker, and the 2 of them learned to make wands together. This is incredibly important to note because wand making does run in the family. Salazar Slytherin himself made his own wand. This was actually the wand that got passed down to Gormlaith and was stolen from Gormlaith by Isolt. So Isolt's wand that she used every day was a wand that was made and used by Salazar Slytherin himself, and actually possessed this very unique ability of being able to be put to sleep, or like essentially turned off, but the wand is just sleeping. And this will be important later, but I just want to throw that in there while we're talking about wand making. Isolt and James learn to make these wands. She gets another shaving from the horned serpent for Webster's wand, and the two boys share brother wands made from the same serpent, and we know how powerful that can be, which we see from opposing sides in Voldemort and Harry. As more witches and wizards came to the family looking for wands, she never went back to the serpent for another core. She used other things like wampus hair and jackalope antlers and stuff like that. So they found other ways to make wands, and they became the wand maker in their area. James and Isolt had built a stone cottage, which they named Ilvermourny, after the cottage that Isolt herself grew up in with her parents. This stone cottage was essentially the first school that she was homeschooling Chadwick and Webster at, and it grew and grew and grew and grew and became this massive castle that housed all of the witch and it grew and grew into this massive castle for all witches and wizards across North America. Eventually, Isolt and James had two daughters of their own, which they named after both of their late mothers, Rhiannoc and Martha. But like I said earlier, this school also had 4 houses. Each house represented a member of the original family. Chadwick was represented by the Thunderbird. Webster was represented by the Wampus. Isolt herself was the Horned Serpent, and James was a Pudwucky. By about 1630s, the school had grown tremendously, and word was really starting to get around, and Isolt had taken the nickname Morrigan after her ancestor. Gormlaith kind of catches wind that there's a new school in America, and the woman that founded it is nicknamed Morrigan. And there are just a couple things adding up, and then when Gormlaith finds out that the school is named Ilvermourny, she's like, no, that's the cottage that I burned down. That's my niece. I finally found her. She's done. So Gormlaith hops her butt all the way over to America and goes after Isolt and her family. Gormlaith finds the family home. She casts a sleeping curse over the parents. Now, Chadwick is outside the house. He sees Gormlaith coming. He starts to duel her. As Chadwick is dueling Gormlaith, Webster then goes and tries to wake his parents, who do not wake up, obviously, because they've been cursed to sleep. He goes down to help his brother. Like I said, their wands were very powerful together, so they were able to keep off somebody like Gormlaith, who even stopped in the middle of the fighting. I wouldn't say middle of the fighting, but she even stopped during this duel, and she was like, are you purebloods? You're a pretty good wizard. I might like to talk to you later if you want to listen to blood supremacy. So she literally tried to recruit them as they're defending their home. This whole hubbub in the front yard woke up their 2 sleeping daughters. Their cries are essentially what jolted Isolt out of this curse. It was, again, the magic of love. Jolted Isolt awake. She heard her daughters crying. She screamed at James until he snapped out of it. He went after the daughters. She went outside after her sons. Her wand was put to sleep by Gormlaith, which she did not know that was possible, so when she went out to help defend her sons, the wand didn't work. The family all got cornered. With Isolt essentially defenseless, the family got cornered inside the house, and right before Gormlaith could cast that final blow on the family, Isolt cried out for her late father. This cry was responded to by the Pudwucky William, who Isolt had cast away 10 years before. He shot a poison arrow into Gormlaith's heart, saving the family. Isolt never told him that she was actually yelling for her late father, but she was incredibly thankful, and William moved in with the family and was serving at the school of Ilvermourny for hundreds of years after that. Isolt was never able to turn the wand back on, so she buried it on the grounds of Ilvermorny, and it sprouted this phenomenal snakewood tree that had these medicinal properties that were able to help the school and other students. After this, both of Isolt's daughters refused to move on with the family line. They both died childless and did not want to continue the line. Now, little did they know there was still a line going down through Marvolo and Tom Riddle and all of those fun people that we're about to get to, but they did what they could because they were not happy about what they saw growing up. Now, that is not every single teeny tiny detail about the founding of Ilvermourny and Isolt's story. I would love to do a video on just her and this school one day, but that was really pretty much everything. But now we're going to move on to the other half of the Gaunt line. Back over in Europe, each descendant of this family was told as they went to Hogwarts about the Chamber of Secrets. Now, it was likely Gormlaith herself was told about it, and she herself protected it while they were at the school. But the next Gaunt that we know about is Ominis Gaunt, and he is coined as the one who did the sink configuration to protect the passageway. Now, the family very much promoted inbreeding, so that way the trait of parcel tongue could continue throughout the family, and that's why it was so strong and why it's such a big deal that it's somebody that is the heir to Slytherin that would be able to speak parcel tongue, because this is the only way into the chamber. So it was very essential that the family members were able to do this. Now, as we see, Ron is able to pick up a few words and open up the chamber, so the language could also have likely just been passed down if it had not been genetically replicated, but who knows. Now, like I said, the family was tasked with protecting these chambers and the basilisk inside. So at some point while Corvinus himself was at school, Hogwarts was updating their plumbing, and he was like, I've got to go protect the little hidey hole. And so he got those sinks kind of set up and implemented the whole parcel tongue sink that then pushed it open, and then you were able to get down to the corridor of secrets to then get to the actual door to the Chamber of Secrets. The next bit of information that we get about the Gaunt family line is through Hogwarts Legacy when we meet Ominis. My Game Boy friend. I love him. Anyway, what we know about the generation before Ominis is just directly through him, and we really just know that there was his parents, who we don't even have their names, it's just Mr. and Mrs. Gaunt, and then one of their sisters is Noxua Gaunt, Ominis' aunt, who we do meet her skeleton in the game. We also know that Ominis has some older siblings, as they have already graduated Hogwarts by the time Ominis is in his 5th year with us. So they're a fair bit older, they've already graduated, but Ominis has completely renounced his family and everything that they stand for. Ominis himself never really agreed with his family's shared love of crucioing muggles, just for the shits and gigs of it all. They really just entertained themselves that way and would treat people really horribly, and were, again, very big on blood supremacy, and Ominis didn't agree with any of this. And one day when he refused to crucio a muggle in a family outing for bonding experience, the family then crucioed him. So his older siblings and his parents crucioed him, and he was like, I'm done. You're not my family anymore. I'm not having anything to do with this. I'm done. I'm out of here. Now, Ominis was born blind, I believe. I thought I had remembered it that after they crucioed him, he became blind. But I think he was actually born blind. But I need to play through the game again to really be sure. So, to be confirmed at a later date. Now, what we learn about Ominis' aunt Noxua is that she also shared his beliefs that Salazar actually could have stood for more than just blood supremacy, and she didn't agree with the family either. She wanted to change the family traditions and change the family ways. So after hearing about the myth and lore of Salazar Slytherin's scriptorium in the Hogwarts castle, she did everything she could to find it. And she did, but the family never heard or saw from her again, because to get through that last door, you have to bring somebody with you so you can crucio them, so that way the door unlocks at the sense of somebody else's tortured pain. She went in alone, she got trapped in this corridor and died there. when you, as the player, Sebastian and Ominis, go into that corridor and you were presented with the task of, do you crucio, do you let him crucio, who's crucioing who? That's her skeleton that's sitting in the corner. It's quite upsetting. It's not proven, nobody knows for sure, but Marvolo's predicted date of birth would put him at the perfect opportunity to be one of Ominis's older siblings. We don't know for sure. It's really just a guess based on dates. He also just could have been a very close cousin line that was born about the same time. But because there's no other descendants and the line does end with Tom Riddle Jr. himself, Voldemort, I don't think that there was really another cousin line. I think at that point it had really merged into a ladder, I would say. By the time we do get to Marvolo and his two children, it already says that in his story, the family money had been squandered away generations ago. So that means that Ominis wouldn't have any family money, and I don't know if it's ever truly mentioned that the family was poor, but Marvolo had nothing. The house was a shack. They lived in the village of Little Hangleton, and they had nothing. The only thing that they had to their name was Marvolo's two most prized possessions, the Gaunt signet ring and Salazar Slytherin's locket. Now, from generations of inbreeding to keep Parseltongue within the family, Marvolo's pretty crazy. He's pretty delusional. He's really unhinged. He's very violent. He's very abusive to his daughter, Merope. So, like I said, Marvolo was not a very good example for Morphin. They both abused Merope. Tom Riddle, the one that marries Merope, is the son of Thomas and Mary Riddle. He's their only son, and they're the richest family in the entire town. Their house sits up on the top of Little Hangleton, and they basically essentially own every bit of land in the entire town aside from the Gaunt shack itself, and that's why they don't tear the whole thing down, because it's atrocious to look at. So Merope had developed a crush on Tom Riddle as he was the wealthiest bachelor, except he actually was dating a girl and she was still in love with him, and it was this whole thing. And this girl was also very pretty, well off in the town. They were a very nice couple, and Morphin noticed that Merope had a crush on him. And one day, and he would often taunt her about hanging out the window to watch him ride down the street. But one day he cursed Tom, and a bunch of boils and things popped all over his skin. And so after this attack that clearly exposed the wizarding world, magic, and was a blatant attack on a muggle, the Ministry then comes to the Gaunt shack, and he's like, hey Morphin, you've got a hearing with the Ministry. You've got to come in. This is the info, date, time, blah, blah, blah. Marvolo then defends his son. He's like, he was a muggle. He deserved it. He should have done that. And they both really put up a fight. They're like, Morphin's not in trouble. He did nothing wrong. So the Ministry official's like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever. He goes and he gets reinforcements. He comes back. Marvolo then goes to Azkaban for 6 months, and Morphin goes for 3 years. Marvolo gets out. He sees just everything is in destruction. Merope has left. Everything has gone to shit in his mind, and he essentially just can't take care of himself, and he dies. Now, for the story of Merope, after her father and brother are sent off to Azkaban, she's essentially free for the first time in her life. They also both teased her and made fun of her because they thought she was a squib. Her magic never fully manifested because of the abuse and torment that she went through day in and day out. Why she didn't turn into an Obscurus, I don't know. Her magic stayed strong, however, and after they left, it finally manifested, and she was able to perform magic and do all of these things, and from this, she got a lot more confidence, and she brewed a love potion for Tom Riddle. After consistently supplying the love potion over the years, or over a little bit of time, I won't say years because I don't know that it was years, but after a fair bit of time, her and Tom ended up having a child, and before she gave birth, she then stopped giving Tom the love potion, hoping he would stay for the child, hoping he would fall in love with her. He was furious, he was astounded, he was in shock, he could not believe what had happened, and he went running home to his parents. Now, his ex-girlfriend from before was like, yeah, no, I'm not taking you back. You left me for that weird little Gaunt girl. no, we're done. So he lived with his parents, and they kind of just tried to forget the whole thing, but he kept to himself that he felt like he was under a spell because he didn't want people to think he was crazy, but he was. Now, Merope now had possession of the Slytherin locket, and she went to Morgan and Burke's and sold it to give herself a little bit of money so she could continue to take care of herself as she was pregnant with Voldemort. As she was getting closer and closer to giving birth, her body was just falling apart. She couldn't hold it together. She knew she was going to die. She found the orphanage, she gave birth, and within the hours she was dead. And Morphin was then released from Azkaban and went back to his family Gaunt shack in Little Hangleton and kind of lived his days there until finally Voldemort was old enough and came to Little Hangleton to meet him. Voldemort grew up in that orphanage doing some really weird things, pushing the limits of reality itself and just being really weird and mean to the other kids. He likely or was insinuated that he hung a rabbit from the rafters, and there were 2 kids that while on a not vacation, what's the word I can't think of, on a field trip with the orphanage, and that, you know, the island where he hides the Slytherin locket eventually, yeah, it was there that they went on that field trip. 2 children went into this cave with him, and they were never the same after, so he was just weird from the start. But he knew how to work a room. He knew how to be charismatic. In the book, when he first meets Dumbledore, it's very clear he demands a wand like Dumbledore's is what it is. He demands a wand like his, and when Dumbledore is taken aback by this kind of behavior, Voldemort completely switches. He's charismatic. He knows what to do. He knows how to get what he wants. Now, because he was conceived under a love potion, he's never able to feel real love. He's just damaged from the beginning. Once Voldemort is then taken to Hogwarts with Dumbledore and is starting to learn magic, he's very quickly top of his class. He was very smart, a very good wizard, and learned really, really well. He was particularly interested in dark arts, however, and clearly made frequent trips to the restricted section of the library to try and learn more. In 1941, he had that conversation with Slughorn about how to make Horcruxes, and by the time we get to June 13th of 1943, that is when he has made his first Horcrux with the death of Myrtle and the basilisk in that bathroom. Now, I did do a whole video on TikTok about my theory about how I think Voldemort found the Chamber of Secrets. I really think he was just deep in that restricted section, and there's no way there wasn't some documentation of the Slytherin line, the Gaunt family, that they would be so deeply ingrained into the castle of Hogwarts that there wouldn't be some documentation of the family line for Tom to connect his middle name to the Gaunt family, to then be able to go to Little Hangleton in the summer/August-ish of 1943 and find the Gaunt shack. He had to have found something about the family in that library or somewhere in this school. So I think he found it through researching a Hogwarts history, figuring out a basilisk, figuring out his name, learning that he can speak Parseltongue, and by finding this and realizing he is the heir to Slytherin and realizing how much he was really taken away from him, from his point of view, from a pure-blood supremacist point of view. His Muggle father stripped him of his right of being heir to Slytherin, of being this great name, of being this great wizard, that he went through all of these years of suffering because of his father. So at this point, Voldemort's pretty angry, and he goes to the Gaunt shack to try to find Marvolo, who is dead at this point, or Marvolo, however you want to say it. I've been saying it different every time. But anyway, goes to find Marvolo. He's already dead. Finds Morphin. Morphin thinks it's Tom Riddle Sr., who is Voldemort's father, because he looks exactly like Tom Riddle. And once Voldemort starts speaking Parseltongue and is like, no, I'm a wizard, I'm part of the family, Voldemort then sits and talks with Morphin and finds out about his father, Tom Riddle, the house, where they are, the history, the family, and finds out a lot more. He then steals Morphin's wand, stuns him, goes up to the Tom Riddle house, Avada Kedavra's Tom Riddle and both of his parents in the drawing room for the maid to find and everybody to be like, what on earth happened to them? There's nothing wrong. We can't see what caused the death. They just look scared to death. After Voldemort Avada Kedavra's everybody, he then goes back to the Gaunt shack. He confunduses Morphin's little memory. He's like, you're actually the one that killed them and you're very proud of it. Here's your wand. The ministry then comes for Morphin. He admits it. His wand documents that he was the one that did it. It's a closed case. He gets sent away to Azkaban for forever. However, before Voldemort leaves, he does take the Gaunt signet ring from Morphin, which holds the Resurrection Stone that nobody in the entire Gaunt family knew was the Resurrection Stone the entire time. I'm not sure Voldemort ever even knew it was the Resurrection Stone, because if he knew that, he wouldn't have just let it go. I don't know that he would have made it Horcrux if he knew it was the Resurrection Stone, but I need to dig into that another day, because on Wednesday, I'm actually going to be doing a series on how Voldemort found and made all of his Horcruxes in my theory, and we're going to dig into that on Wednesday. Anyway, this ring is how Dumbledore came into possession, because when he found this ring as a Horcrux and it cursed his hand and he destroyed it, he found the Resurrection Stone and was able to put it in the snitch to give to Harry. I think we're all pretty familiar with the rest of Voldemort's story and how he comes to end at the hands of Harry himself. I think that's pretty much it. That is the end of the Gaunt line through and through. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said, tune in Wednesday for my theories on how he found and made all of those Horcruxes. Like and subscribe and hang out with me on TikTok all week. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a good one.